It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Daniel Pandino, and I work for the Brazilian Senate in the Innovation Support Center. I'd like to welcome you all here. And first, I would like to ask Jonathan to introduce himself, and then we can proceed to our first point, which has to do with our discussion around the digitalization of the Hansard and the shorthand processes in the legislative branch. So, Jonathan, we've seen along the meeting that the digitalization is a thing for most legislative houses, and we have to face many challenges. And the first question that I have is why, among so many priorities, it makes sense to take Hansard, as a process to be digitalized.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So my name's Jonathan from NovaWorks. We've been working with parliaments around the world for the last 15 to 20 years and helping them with their digitalization processes, moving them from the paper-based monoliths and the legacy and traditional processes which have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and moving them into the 21st century. So, so as we all know, the Hansard is the official record of Parliament, and one of the key areas around that is that it does have a high demand from both the public and also internal users, whether that be legislature staff or members of parliament or a range of other sort of internal users as well. It's a great source of information from both an educational point of view or learning point of view, and also provides a really good history of the legislative direction of Parliament and its committees as well. And so these sort of areas does really lend itself to becoming a really good candidate for a priority to become like part of the House's digital strategy as well. As we all know with Hansard is that usually within Hansard, it takes a lot of people to develop Hansard and to develop the publishing artifacts and outputs as well. So it can be quite labor intensive, and because it has been, you know, traditionally done quite manually. So lots of different people putting together content to actually create that large transcript at the end. And so when we look at digitalization and the work which we've actually done with other parliaments, it's really about how do we assist in the reduction of manual handling efforts, deduplication of data silos, a whole range of other things where, you know, staff have actually, you know, don't actually have to require to, you know, enter data multiple times across different parts of the parliamentary process as well. So it's also understanding that the data may exist and that you just may not be aware of it. So with the, it's trying to work out how do we really basically extract the information which you've already got, and then reuse it in multiple different ways as well. So whenever we look at the digitization of Hansard or any other sort of parliamentary process, it's about saying, it's looking at it holistically as well and saying, we may have already bits of information, and then how do we actually drive that and reuse it in meaningful ways as well. We're sort of seeing a lot of trends within parliaments as well to use automated speech recognition to capture first drafts now, and member recognition and speaker recognition as well. So it's about how do we within Hansard then potentially utilize that from a digitalization point of view to really about removing the mundane, manual, repetitive tasks, and then making reporters and editors focus on what we call the high value tasks. So editing the content, removing the noise, as we call it. So when members of parliament, you know, get a bit rowdy or something like that, we don't necessarily have to record that. We just have to record the actual factual statements of what's actually occurring within parliament. So what we find from the parliaments that we've worked with, the transitions from paper-based to a digital reality can be an exciting one for the parliament. So that's another sort of thing which we actually like to focus on, because once I actually see the benefits for the staff, for members, citizens as well, they look at, well, we've actually now increased our transparency, the accessibility, and searchability of Hansard as well. And also key wins such as actually getting the content to the actual consumers in a lot shorter period of time. We've worked with some parliaments who, you know, Hansard was getting published once a month. You know, with digitization, we can get that down to hours after actually sitting as well. So there's some very, very big wins, especially from a citizen point of view as well, when you actually look at some of the benefits of the real tangible outputs, which we can actually then provide. So, so that's sort of, yeah, my sort of general thoughts around the digitalization and why I think, you know, Hansard can actually be a priority. It can help staff, it can help, instead of staff, so some parliaments have staff which were, after the actual house had actually risen, you know, waiting for, you know, 8 hours to actually finish their first draft of Hansard. They can now leave within an hour, you know. So from a work-life balance point of view, digitization is actually helping, you know, people's mental health. It's helping a lot of other areas as well, outside of just publishing content as well.
Well, there's a lot of advantages in bringing this process to the digital world, it seems. I don't know, Shahin, do you have any other advantage to add, or any other result you've already reached in Azerbaijan to share with us? And please introduce yourself.
My name's Shahin Hasanov. I'm head of the Department of Information Researches. I agree with Jonathan about why we need digitalization of Hansard. It is very important for investigators, for lawmakers, for researchers, for everybody. At the same time, but now young people more use mobile phones than books or something like that. That's why very important to have all information in digital form, in digital application on mobile phones and everything that people can listen and read or something like that. In Azerbaijan prospect, in my presentation, I introduced that we try to keep all information in digital area, in virtual area, even voting result, audio files, video files, helps people who listen original information, not conversation, not, we don't need software recondition system to conversion to voice to text. But if you have this information, you can still listen, because I am an engineer. Any conversation has some mistakes. That's why to give this information to people, to citizens, in true way, in correct way, I think it's very important.
That's nice. Ricardo, I would like you to tell us about the experience we have here in Brazil, in the House of Representatives and also in the Senate, sure. Regarding the process that we have pre-digitalization of Hansard, the time that we normally took before digitalizing some parts of the process
Let me
and the
come back
quality of the information we have on air.
Okay, let me come back and introduce myself first.
Yes,
my name is Ricardo. I have working for the Brazilian House of Representatives, or how we call it, the Chamber of Deputies, for almost 20 years. And I have been working for the Hansard department for 3 years now. So first, I agree with my colleagues. I think personally, I think that official report, it's an amazing primary source, and it's utilized a lot in political science research. But broadly speaking, here we have the constitutional duty to publicize parliamentary debates. So this is fundamental for both the transparency of the legislative process and for people keep tracking the national debate. Also, sometimes the Speaker of the House utilizes the Hansard to clarify this legislative process or its results during the sessions. In Brazil, the Hansard report has public faith, so it's like a notary public. So it is utilized in legal process as well, providing legal certainty for the House's work. And besides that, the metadata that is added to the parliamentary debate ensures not only the complete historical record, as Jonathan said, but also it makes much easier to recover any information at any time. So to me, it's really clear how important the Hansard report is. And since we are having fewer and fewer Hansard reporters, because they are an expensive workforce, so it makes a lot of sense to prioritize the Hansard in our digital strategy. So that is the why question, right? So let's talk about the transition process that Daniel was asking about. So to us, this transition process it's natural and it's desirable. So actually, our Hansard process today, and it's innate as well, it's totally digital. Of course, many times the Hansard reporters, they must be in loco, like during floor sections. We have 513 congressmen, 16 microphones in the floor, and yes, many of them talk at the same time. So it's really hard. So the presence of the reporter also ensures the public faith and provide the legal certainty for the debates. So the process, our team is still using shorthand symbols, but now they do it on a tablet. So they don't use pen and paper anymore. And after that, they transcribe the text using a software called Scriba. It's the same for both houses. And they insert some metadata and they publish it in our portal. The whole process takes 1 hour. That's the mean. And we have less than 3 mistakes in a 4 minutes transcription in this first draft. We call it real-time debate. And then we have a second team that review the Hansard. They remove repetitions, correct grammar, and obvious mistakes. But they can't change the meaning of what is said by the congressman. So it's still the verbatim record. This process takes like 24 hours, and we publish again the Hansard, known as the final writing. And in these 35 years, we never ever had one complaint about errors or mistakes made by our review team. And we also provide the audio and the video files of each speech along with the Hansard in our portal.
Well, Ricardo, this information you brought us already address one of my next points, and it would be how to deal with the professionals of Hansard. I mean, it's a very important technique. It has to do with the history of the legislative branch, and these people are highly qualified, and obviously we can find some resistance in some organizational cultures against digitalization processes. And it may seem that in Hansard writing, it might be even worse than in other areas of the administration or the legislative branch. And how do you cope with that? How was the process regarding the people, the professionals of Hansard writing in the Chamber of Deputies in Brazil?
I don't think that's the resistance is not that much in the utilizing technology in the process, but it's a natural process, you know. So despite the increased use in technology in the process, the intellectual work carried out by the Hansard reporter, such as grammatical corrections, research. So for example, a gross geographic mistake, like mixed up river's name, context analysis. So they need to know about the legislative process, as you said, about history, about the parties, and even a little about each congressman. They also need to keep the cohesion and the coherence of the whole text. And this will not be replaced by technology so soon. That's for sure. But sounds logic when you said, okay, now you have some digital tools to help you in your job. So with increasing technology, the workload per employee must be gradually and significantly increased. And it's logic, but it's hard to to make the Hansard report team establish this kind of culture and deliver more, only because now you have more help from digital tools. So in this way, I think it's hard to change, but they accept the technology. It is for sure. It's easy to, if it's helpful, they accept it easily.
I think, yeah, it's a very, very interesting point, isn't it? That we find we're dealing with lots of different Hansard teams as well, that there are a few within the team who are very accepting of new technology, etc. But also when we look at technology as enabler, there are certain technologies out there which are not necessarily mature enough, such as the automated speech recognition, etc. So if you only have a low accuracy in the automated speech to text, then it's actually more painful for Hansard to, they'll have to rewrite it anyway. So it's actually finding that right balance between acceptable use of our technology rather than actually making it a hindrance on the team too. So there's actually a lot of different ways to actually, you know, look at that in terms of, you know, we should be looking at technology as an enabler of Hansard rather than a, you know, trying to take over something as an example.
To substitute the work in a way. And how does it work in Australia and also in Azerbaijan? The use of technology regarding the difference in accents and regionalisms that are present in the speeches of the congressmen.
So yeah, we in Australia within our Hansard, we have a few different sort of techniques which we use as well. So Hansard has to be attuned to listening to different members of parliament and the different committees, and also even when we're looking at committees, when we're actually dealing with witnesses or even within committee inquiries. So there's a very specialist unique skill when, you know, you have to use your hearing to actually understand, you know, who is actually speaking and who actually has the floor as well. So, you know, that's quite a unique skill as well. And what we find, especially with the younger generation coming in to work in Hansard as well, is that the stenography machines or the shorthand machines, we're finding it harder and harder to find people to train people to use those sort of machines as well, unless you're coming from a court reporting type of scenario or a different sort of, you know, shorthand type of scenario as well. So we find some challenges even you know, from a training point of view as well. So it is quite interesting in terms of, you know, how we can then utilize some of that technology to bridge that gap between people who've been within Hansard and for the last 20 years or 30 years, you know, from, you know, quite a while back, to bringing in newer talent or, you know, newer sort of forward thinking people within Hansard as well.
In our system, also helps for traditional stenographers. And one of the more users who use our systems, this is stenographers. When they have some problem or some they understood, they watch video of the speaker and they try to understand what the main idea was that. As you know, many traditional ways stenographer writes. After that, the editors make changes on the stenographer's report. And editors, one of the users who use our system. And when we first give them audio, they were happy. When we give them video of the speaker, they was happy and thanks for us, because it's helped them to more through way describe it in written way.
And Shahin, what about the renewal of the professionals? This problem Jonathan brought us, the difficulty of finding new people, learning the technique and helping out with the digitalization process.
About the when our presentation, the person from Finland gave me a question about that, why it was so long. During the process, I changed 2 times my staff. The people goes and came, and other people, despite that, we try explain them, learn them, all this process. For new people, parliamentary activities for them very difficult, because parliament activity is different from the government, because it is different. Maybe for me it's very difficult to describe that, but it is very different, because many people come to the parliament, they need time to learn these activities.
Yeah, that's true. And Shahin, what advice would you give to legislative house who'd like to begin with the process of digitalization of Hansard?
To be honest, I am thinking like any process in this part, this is in our world, we transfer this information to the virtual. If you know this process in the written form or in our activities, it will be very easy to move to the virtual space. That's why any case, have patience, have learned activities in reality. After that, think about the virtual. So yeah, I am at the same time, I'm a lecturer at university. All my students, I am say every time says, virtual space, this is a reflex of the ours, our world, but only reflex. What we can do here at the same time we can do in virtual space. That's why I don't think it is very difficult or something like that. But difficult for the person to learn the activities in reality, if in the world, in our world. If it will be okay, I think in this digitalization transformation will be very easy.
What about you, Jonathan? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, I agree. it's understanding your existing process and then really about how do you then map that to what you want as an outcome from a digital perspective. So we are sort of seeing a trend now where even draft Hansards and draft content is within an hour is actually being published to the internet for citizens and other sort of consumers to actually go through. So I think understanding what the Parliament's appetite for publishing content in a more real-time view as well is going to be of interest, and understanding how members will actually feel about that too. So it's understanding, I think, from a there are ways which you can look at from a digitization point of view. Can you actually break down silos of information? So every house department has their own little silo of information. Can you create a common data set around some of that content as well? So looking at that sort of more holistic view as well can help when you actually then look at driving what changes you actually want from Hansard as well. So there are definitely a range of opportunities to be taken around that. So in Australia, for example, we have a common data schema where it's all open data sets, and so we actually publish Hansard in it may look different on the actual web page, but backing it is actually a common open data schema for all of Hansard across Australia and also Asia Pacific as well, that other parliaments can then reuse as an open data schema as well. So it's understanding that there's actually a lot of, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel to digitize Hansard as well. There are a lot of good resources out there for you to actually do that sort of content as well. So, you don't necessarily have to think about these processes, yourself and design everything yourself. There are a lot of tools out there which will help with that process to make it a lot easier on the Parliament.
Nice. Ricardo, welcome back. And
I'm sorry.
No problem. And we are collecting here tips in order to help out the legislative houses which are beginning to face the challenge of digitalizing the Hansard process. Well, now we're discussing about what would you advise for a legislative house that is beginning to face the process of the digitalizing their Hansard process.
All right.
What would you tell them? What
right.
would serve?
All right. First things first, I believe that before the challenge of digitalizing the service, there is an even greater challenge of structuring the Hansard report team. So the use of technology can make these teams smaller, but good professionals are still needed, that's for sure. The second tip, I believe that do not focus on documents. Instead, you need to focus on legislative events, such as the floor sections, the committee meetings, the public hearings. And since it's just too hard to report everything that happened in Parliament, I believe that's necessary to prioritize and attend to what is more important. So you need to do a prioritization of what is more important in the House legislative events. Third, try to model your working process before digitalizing it. People tend to jump into digitalization before process modeling, and this is a really big mistake. If you have a problematic process and you try to digitalize it, you will have only a digital problem instead. So that's the first step. And as you said, Daniel, do not underestimate organizational culture. It's changing culture. It's always difficult. So even though these tools are helpful for the Hansard team do his job, you have a lot of different problems that arrive with that. For example, as I said, how can you increase the workload for them using digital tools? And finally, I think you need to slow down when you're assessing digital tools that you think are the best for your work. There's a lot of options available. So do some benchmarking, start a formal project, and carefully pick the digital tools that your team utilize in the Hansard process. I think that's why I have to say about that.
There's one last question that I'd like to present to you. It has to do with this point that you brought, and Jonathan has talked about it as well, in the sense that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. The solutions are there. There are plenty of tools to be used, but still, in Brazil at least, when you talk about digitalization of the Hansard process, it is a reality in the national houses. If we look to the small cities and even to states, this is not a reality. And the first question is, does the same happen in your countries? And why do you think this happens? If we do have the tools, the applications are available, why is that? Why only the national houses, or mostly the national houses, are the ones who have improved this process? Ricardo, first, please.
Well, we have more money, right? That's why. And for example, I'll tell you a real story about one of these tools that everybody thinks that's easy to change the typing. So the automatic tools for typing that you call automatic transcription to replace typing. They have many of them, right, in the market. So we have, for example, the Amazon AWS, Google GCP, Microsoft Azure, Voice Note, Ravi, Transcriber. We have a lot of them. And we have been testing most of these tools for more than 3 years now. In the beginning, the results were just unacceptable. And now they start to be helpful. And I think, it was the Senate team that discovered 2 different free tools in Telegram. One of them is called Transcriber, and the other one is the Voicey. And they are free. And they start to use these tools, not officially, but as a helpful solution for them. And we start to disseminate that for our teams, and we decrease the publishing time, and it's just helpful, and it's free. So any kind of legislative house could use these kind of things, for example. Another example is the speaker identification, as Jonathan said. However, it's one thing to recognize a different speaker. So there's a lot of solutions that can do that. But it's a totally different thing to be able to identify precisely a congressman without human intervention. And we can accept like, we did it right 90% of time. No, it must be 100%. It cannot be a mistake in identification. So we believe that it will take time to have a good solution for that, for example. But personally, I believe that combining facial and voice identification in one tool, maybe we'll be able to do the job properly. I answer your question, Daniel?
Yeah, very well. And Shahin, what do you say? Do you have this same difference between the national house and the smaller ones, the ones in the cities, regarding the digitalization process of Hansard?
To be honest, our country is a small country. We have one parliament. That is why I think we have to do these issues. In any case, I listen, Ricardo, I think our parliament is, I don't know, but it goes a little different to these issues, and we use the traditional ways to create Hansard, the stenograph at the same time, but at the same time, our parliament used this feature which was created into parliament. About the recondition, we didn't have any softwares, but there is a company who introduced us to buy this software in order to transform speech to the text. But even now in our parliament, demand for the paper version of stenography is very low, because our verbatim record, it is acceptable for everybody, for MPs, for staff, and everything. Everyone can use it. But I remember the time when we don't have such system. MPs, initiatives, body waiting as a late in the parliament, paper version of draft version of the stenography or verbatim record. But after that, we create the system, no such demand for the paper version. Because in other time, we didn't much any money. We develop in the house of the parliament. This is our system. That's why I think it was very successful, maybe.
And that's nice. It's nice, Shahin. To have the people to develop the system in house. That's really something. And how about you, Jonathan? What do you say about Australia? And do you have this difference between the lower houses, the state and city houses, and the national one?
No, actually, we're relatively fortunate here in Australia, where a lot of the parliaments, even the federal and the state parliaments, are very sort of a tight-knit community. So they share the knowledge. They also share the techniques. They share the software, the processes between the parliaments to actually help them enable, you know, the actual inputs around Hansard. And that's why we sort of have now more of an open data set or an open data policy to actually share that content, both with researchers, with you know, other sort of citizens as well, where you can actually consume that data in a very friendly way as well. So I suppose we are a little bit more fortunate here, where Hansard has come a long way from the paper-based sort of society than to that digital sort of transformed. We still have quite a way to go, don't get me wrong, but we're definitely on the way with that journey. And I think that a lot of that's due to a lot of sharing of knowledge, sharing of content around that sort of digital strategy as well.
Very nice. Well, guys, I'd like to thank you very much for your participation in this panel. And I would like to leave the panel for you for your closing remarks, for your final remarks. So we got more or less two minutes for each of you. And I'd like to thank Bússola Tech for this amazing opportunity to have this talk with you guys, and see you next time. Bye-bye.